Welcome back, everyone. We have with us Session Chair Professor Venkatesh Kamath. Professor Venkatesh Kamath is a member of the ACM India Council and a visiting professor at IIT Goa. He has greatly helped to develop the compute community, perhaps most importantly, by hosting Compute 19 at Goa University. His primary research interests are in computer graphics and experience technology. I now request Session Chair Professor Venkatesh Kamath to begin with the session discourse.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you the well-deserved recipient of the ACM India Outstanding Contribution to Computing Foundation Award, Professor Shekhar Iyer. As mentioned by Professor Jayant Pariksa, this award has been received from this year, recognizes individuals who have made fundamental, innovative, and impactful contribution to computing education in India. Professor Shekhar Iyer is a professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering and head of the interdisciplinary program on computational technology at IIT Bombay. He is also head of the Center for Systems Engineering Education and the principal investigator of the national program on technology and
BVK, there's so much background noise. Can we actually mute them and then start again? There's so much background noise. I don't know from whose end.
Fan is on.
So VVK, never mind. I'll take it from here.
So let me just complete that.
No.
The important part is still remaining.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
currently
Check.
Can you switch off your fan?
fan is off.
Fan is off. Okay.
Can you hear now? Clearly? Okay. So he's let me continue with the introduction of Professor Shekhar. His current research interests are in the field of education technology. He has guided more than 10 PhD students in computing education research. He developed and implemented innovative teaching strategies in the classroom that promote active learning. Last year, for ACM 2019, he conducted a workshop on computing education research. He focused on the teaching learning of thinking skills. Sridhar has been actively involved in organizing high-tech technology for education conferences in India for the last 10 years. What is very striking about Sridhar is that he really understands the pains of teaching on smaller towns and inspired him to take up research. Sridhar has been instrumental in bringing many international conferences to India, such as ICC, ICANN, and to provide access to all people by sponsoring their participation. Many computer science faculty across the country got benefited by this conferences and interacting with the international community of research. I would like to mention here about Sridhar's thoughtful gesture towards the future generation. He has written a ebook series named Computer Masti for Solution. Let us welcome Professor Shekhar Iyer to deliver the keynote address. My request to all participants to write their questions in the Q&A tab. We shall take all the questions. And over to you.
Venkatesh Kamath sir.
Thank you. Organizers to mute everyone except me.
अपने जित्सी को म्यूट कर लेना.
Hitanshu, can you mute your mic? Okay, So looks like I'm the only one talking now. So I will begin. So thank you, Venkatesh, for that gracious introduction. And this is also I thank ACM for inviting me to give this talk as part of the OCC award. I won't talk about the award here because that is perhaps a separate function. So I will just start straight away with the idea of what is computing education research opportunities in India. So before I begin, let me just confirm that you can see my screen and you can hear me clearly.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. So before I dive into computing education research, let me just give a quick overview of EdTech at IIT Bombay. So currently I head this program of interdisciplinary program on education technology. It's a 10-year-old program. So we are also celebrating the decade of EdTech, like VNIT is celebrating their Diamond Jubilee. We have 5 core faculty, 15 associate faculty, 2 postdocs, and some research staff. Currently, we have 15 PhD students who have graduated and about 25 PhD students who are ongoing. Last year, we started an MTech program towards fulfilling some of the need in the country for trained manpower in this area. So we do research in technology enhanced learning environments. We develop tools, we develop MOOCs, and we also engage with government and do consultancy. So a quick flavor of the research that we do, one of them is called technology enhanced learning environments for development of disciplinary practices. And the other one is called teacher use of education technology. So in both of these, we develop models. We come up with, in one, we come up with models of how students learn. In the other, we come up with models of how we can do teaching. And then there are 2 areas called Emerge, which is basically a playground where we, buy new technology and try to see what educational purpose can be developed through that. So for example, on the left, you see somebody wearing a Mayo band and playing badminton. So that's, getting feedback on whether the shot was right or wrong. And then we also work in educational data analytics, where we use multimodal data to model the learner and determine, why learning is happening, how learning is happening, and so on. Okay. So with that introduction, let me begin with today's topic. So what I'm going to be talking about is to give you an idea of what is computing education research, since this topic may be a little new to many. Then what are levels of education research? So that's a useful framework by which to do this activity. How to do this, what are some methods, how to get started, and what are some opportunities in India. And to make sure that it's not totally dry, we will try to answer these through some illustrative examples. So my attempt here is not to be comprehensive, but more to be comprehensible. Okay, so what is computing education research? If you look at it, we are all familiar with the idea of computing education, okay, which involves deploying curricula, coming up with courses, teaching the courses. Many of us use LMSs, use different types of education technology, let's say visualizations or automated program checkers, or even a tutoring system. And many of us are also used to having learning analytics built around that, like taking decisions on the basis of how students do and performing assessment. So these are some of the activities that we are familiar with in carrying out computing education. Then there is the discipline of education research, which deals with how learning happens, what causes students to learn, what is the model that they build, and so on. So this draws from the disciplines of learning science, cognitive cognitive science, educational psychology, research methods of social sciences, and a lot of allied disciplines. So what computing education research is about, as many of you would have guessed, is an amalgamation of both these areas. So it basically brings the education research ideas into the CS topics and courses. So one of the primary requirements is that we try to understand how students learn computing. Where are the misconceptions? Why do they have these misconceptions? Then there are areas of designing learning environment. So learning environment could be a classroom environment, or it could also be a online environment. But the key here is to design it based on evidence, conduct experiments, and design the environment based on evidence, not simply based on one's intuition. Then we can create edtech interventions for computing education. So this could be at different levels. It could be at the college level or at the school level. And like I mentioned, so all of this is driven by effectiveness studies and also evolving theories of how the learning happens. So broadly speaking, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is a broadly speaking, this is the idea of how these two, computing education and education research, come together in the area of computing education research. So now, if we look at this concept map, so in 2020, so there's one conference called Computing Education Research Workshop. So ICER 2020. In ICER 2020, there was a paper which actually did an analysis of all the last 15 years papers in the key conferences in computing education, and did a keyword analysis. So the size of the keyword, as you would have guessed, depends on how frequently that keyword occurs. And the color is some grouping of keywords, as well as the links between the keywords is, which two keywords are connected to each other. So as you can see here, the introductory programming, so there's been a lot of focus on introductory programming, how students perform, are they learning programming concepts, and so on. And then let me just zoom into it also. And then if you look at the next big box, there's a lot of work around assessment. Work is there around computational thinking, and a little bit of work is there on software development, software engineering, how to create software engineering courses. Then an entire area of how to get people to do programming that's different from programming courses. Okay. So there's some work on high school students, teaching them recursion, teaching them computational thinking. There's some work on games, algorithm visualization, and then there's some work on student engagement, dropout, and so on. Okay, so this is predominantly the broad themes that people have been focusing on. Now, this does not mean that these are the only themes that are there. So there are other themes which people are yet to, some of which people are yet to get going with. Okay, so let me just unzoom this properly. Okay. So here's another view. So this is a view wherein the learner is at the center. So here we engage with different learners with multiple perspectives. So each type of learner is represented by this oval. So there could be learners who are CS majors. There could be learners who are actually CS teachers, who are now trying to create MOOCs or go ahead. Then there could be learners who are CS non-majors who are trying to pick up some CS courses. Many institutes actually offer a minor program. And then there is the school segment, which is K through 12, where we talk about topics like science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So in all of these, again, there are three different axes along which we can view computing education research. So the three axes here are, if you look at the legend, one is cognition, which is basically what are they learning, how they're learning. So if you look at that, there are topics like problem solving skills, coding and software design, computational models, and so on. Then there is another axis along which we can look at it, which is how it is situated in the community. So which is about interests and passions and so on. And finally, there is the critical inquiry angle, where they're talking about, topics like social justice, agency. Agency means how I want to develop as a professional in the area. And then there is gender and enrollment. So these are all different types of questions which can be asked for pretty much all the learner groups. But in this figure, we have just tried to give it as a representative set of examples. Okay, so what I will do now is I will talk about one of them and then dive into some examples. So if we look at CS majors as the area, okay, so one aspect is to emphasize skill building and competencies which are useful in college and future careers. So as CS teachers, we are very familiar with this aspect, right? All our courses are oriented towards doing this. So the obvious example is coding and software design. Of course, there are also other examples, theory courses, proofs, and so on. So this is all geared towards building of skill in that area. Then the next petal, so to speak, is about activities of personal interest, where they can join groups and communities, like for example join in open source projects, GitHub, free and open source software, create something, contribute to the community, and so on. And the third aspect is where they can be engaged in personally relevant social issues like ethics or language issues, or some of the diversity that is prevalent in India. So these are some areas in which we can engage in computing education research with CS majors. Here are some examples. So these are some examples that are from our group at IIT Bombay. So one of the things that we have done is teaching learning of troubleshooting of networks, software design along various at various levels, evaluation of designs, knowledge integration. So these are all topics that we have dealt with. I'll talk a little bit more about them later on. Then in terms of interest, we have dealt with topics like tinkering, how to nurture tinkering for school students as well as college students. And then in the critical inquiry area, we've dealt with questions like, how to teach scaffolding to how to teach programming to vernacular medium learners, or even determining, why are learners opting for CS, and so on. So this was one idea of how we can go into one of the areas. So there are other slides here, which I will not go into great detail. I'll just do one more, and then I'll skip a few slides in order to get to the examples. The slides are still there for the sake of looking at it later on. So when we talk about teachers, again we can talk about training teachers for various purposes. Like one aspect could be to how to create MOOCs. We can do online training, and then there is the notion of creating communities of practice where teachers can come together to create question banks or concept inventories, or teachers collaborate across multiple institutional studies. And then it could be that we also can train teachers to do action research in their courses. So a lot of these generating models for how to do teacher training effectively, a lot of these comes under the purview of again learner centered computing education research. Okay, so these are again some examples. Like CS Pathshala, of course, is a very good example of this teacher focused computing education activity. And then there are like online courses that we have created, and so on. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the next two views, the non-majors views and the K through 12 view, and instead go to the question of okay, so all of this is there. Now how do I get going with this type of research? So one framework which is useful for carrying out such research is called the levels of inquiry in engineering education. Okay, so these levels of inquiry actually is from this resource that is listed at the bottom of the slide. So in level 0, you're basically teaching as taught as in typically the 20th century model where it's lecturing is predominant. In level 1, the teacher becomes an effective teacher and teaches using accepted teaching theories and practices. So I'll shortly give an example of all of these. So right now, this is just for you to get the broad overview. So in level 2, it's a scholarly teacher who actually assesses performance, makes improvements, and does some data driven activities. In level 3, which is actually called the scholarship of teaching and learning, or scholarship of learning and teaching nowadays, the teacher engages in educational experimentation, shares results, there is some generalizability that comes in. And in level 4, the researcher and the teacher are actually seamlessly going back and forth, and the teacher conducts educational research, publishes archival papers, and also deals with the why and how of learning. Okay, so now what I'll do is go through these levels quickly through some examples. So in level 1, the teacher uses accepted teaching theories. So one example is this demystifying course that I've offered on the Swayam platform. So in this, we use a lot of active learning strategies. So think, pair, share is one particular active learning strategy, which has been known to have useful benefits in the classroom, as well as also in some sort of online context. So we use that. Then we use algorithm visualization. We use analogical problem solving. So these are all ideas that we actually simply deploy in the course. So many of us as teachers have these ideas, right? We feel that, yeah, okay, for this topic, maybe I'll show a video, or for that topic, okay, let me make the students do some computation on their own and share it. So these ideas that we come up with on the fly for being effective, these ideas fall in level 1. So what we are doing is, the only level of feedback that we are getting is, occasionally you might ask students after the class, did it make sense, or is there any feedback, or we might look at what have students said in the course evaluation form. So there's typically not much more evaluation of these strategies, and we are generally deploying them based on intuition. So that's the level 1. So here's another example of carrying out think, pair, share in a large CS 101 class. So think, pair, share basically means that for 2 minutes the individual thinks individually, and then for another 2 minutes they discuss with their neighbor, and then subsequently they share their responses to the entire class. So this example is for predicting the output of this particular program, and it shows how the think phase, the pair phase, and the share phase work out. So there are many such ideas that we implement in our classes almost routinely at level 1. So then when we move up to level 2, what happens is we take the same ideas, but we can investigate them a little more thoroughly, a little more in detail. Okay? So we assess performance and we make improvements. So evaluation of performance is not simply through the exams, but also through ideas like observation of what is happening in the classroom, or a student perception questionnaire, or an instructor's interview, and so on. So this example, for example, is from a data structures course, and it was taught by a colleague, Professor Ganesh Ramakrishnan. And the researchers were Deepthi and a few others from the education technology department. Okay, so what we did was ABAB design. So what an ABAB design means is that in phase A, you're doing the activity, you're teaching a topic without implementing think, pair, share, and in phase B, you're implementing it with think, pair, share. And then the third topic again you implement without, and the fourth topic you implement with. So that's the idea of A, B, A, B. And what was found is that when we use think, pair, share for some topics, the relative gain is higher for those topics. So this paper quoted below actually has the entire detail, But at this point, it's sufficient to understand that a simple ABAB design, it's not a experimental group and a control group kind of design. It's the same class. Within the same class, for one topic, you're treating it one way, another topic, you're treating it the other way. And you can actually come up with some findings. So usually at this level, the findings is focused on how the method worked for that teacher, how it worked for me, for my students. So the generalizability is not such a big goal, and it may work for others, it may not work for others. So in order to get there, what is useful is when we move on to level 3. Okay, so level 3, which is the scholarship of teaching and learning, the teacher now engages in educational experimentation. For example, continuing with the same idea of think, pair, share. So what we did, so this was a large CS 101 class that I taught. And what we did was, I mean, there were about, I think, a total of maybe 250 students in each batch. I think total of 450 students. And what we wanted to do was, we wanted to see that, what is the effect of think, pair, share in such a large classroom. So that was a new idea to be explored. Think, pair, share was known to be effective in small classes. We wanted to see what happens if we try to implement it in a large class. So a bunch of students and colleagues, we actually went to the class, we carried out observations and used specific research methods like a control study, collected multiple sources of data, surveys, muddy points, in-class observation, etc., in order to come up with this research, answers to these research questions. So just to give you a flavor, what we found was like how much student engagement occurs during the think, pair, share activity. So we found that, by and large, during the think phase, there is about, so the first bar is the think phase, the second bar is the pair phase, and the third bar is the share phase. And this color red means that percentage of people are not engaged, and green means, that percentage of people are fully engaged. So if you look at it across different problems, you find that, the green bar is consistently high. So basically in the think phase, people are engaged for about 70% of the time. The pair phase, they're engaged for about 95% of the time. And again, in the share phase, they're engaged for 75 to 90% of the time. So how did we come up with this result? We actually had people sitting in the classroom as observers, and they had an observation protocol. They would note down, every second they would be looking at a specific subgroup of students. What is the student doing, and kind of code that behavior. So for example, if the student is looking in some random direction, it would be coded as non-engaged. If the student is actually engaged in discussion, it would be coded as, on task engagement. And then we triangulated the data. What we mean by triangulate is to confirm whether that finding is valid or not through other sources, for example, a perception survey, as well as their performance. So this data analysis considers, validity threats, and there's also a notion of reliability. So for example, in this particular study, we carried out this observation protocol in 13 lectures, and for the first 8 lectures or so, we were only ensuring that our observation protocol becomes reliable and the instrument is fine-tuned, and the actual data analysis was done on the latter 5 lectures. So this is basically about how one can go at a more systematic way of education research at level 3. Okay. And then when we come to level 4, uh, we conduct educational research, publish archival papers, and so on. So on this slide clearly has a lot of questions. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of showing you that, I am simply going to play the video of the people who have worked on those questions. So let me just make sure that you can hear this.
I'm Lakshmi, my bio-reads mother, software developer, teacher for undergraduate CS engineering students, comic book ME enthusiast, and a PhD student in computing education research.
So is that audible?
Not really.
No.
Okay, then maybe I should increase the volume.
So for sharing the video, you will have to tick 2 options below.
Okay, let
So
me
can
stop
you
sharing and
optimize? Yeah. You share again.
okay. I will share again. Yeah, I'll share the video this time. Yeah, I'll share
There are,
computer sound. That's probably.
yeah, so tick both the
I think
options
sharing
below.
computer sound should work.
Yeah, and optimize,
Okay,
yeah.
then I have to come back to the slides. Okay. I'll do that and then I will come back to share the thing again. Okay. So hopefully it works now.
And a PhD student in computing education research.
Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The thesis is titled Fostering Software Conceptual Design by the Function Behavior Structure Design Framework. The expected outcome of SCD is a solution represented by various diagrams. From our novice studies, we found specific difficulties such as fixation and lack of integration. To alleviate these difficulties, we have designed and developed a web-based learning environment called Think and Link. Our solution is based on the FBS design framework. Incidentally, each of the SCD representation corresponds to either F, B, or S perspective. So by thinking and linking FBS elements together, we can help students create cohesive and integrated solutions. Do check out Think and Link as well as our computing education blog site. Feel free to connect with me. Thank you.
Namaste, I am Kavya Alse. I pursued my bachelor's and master's in computer science, now working in the domain of computing education research.
My research is about enhancing computer network troubleshooting among computer science undergraduates. It focuses on building a technology-enhanced learning environment. First, I investigated the difficulties faced by students while solving network troubleshooting problems. Then, based on these difficulties and based on existing literature, a pedagogy to teach network troubleshooting has been designed. A learning environment called Fighter has been developed based on this pedagogy. After working with Fighter, we found that students identify the usefulness of spending time to understand a problem before actually trying to solve it. And we found that they do a more systematic, evidence-based approach of hypothesis testing during troubleshooting. Fighter can be accessed by students and teachers in the given link.
Hello everyone, I am Prajesh Prasad. I am a computing education researcher and soon to graduate PhD student. Prior to joining my PhD, I was a software developer in an edtech startup and also an engineering instructor. I am broadly interested in understanding how students reason with software design diagrams. As part of my thesis, I developed a learning environment called Verisim, which helps learners develop an integrated understanding of different software diagrams like the class and the sequence diagram. Findings from my research study show that learners develop an improved understanding of the software design process after interacting with Verisim. Verisim is freely available online and can be used by instructors and students in their software engineering courses.
Hello, my name is Shitanshu Mishra and I am an EdTech research scientist at IIT Bombay. Among several computing education research projects, I would like to mention one of my initial project, which was about implementing visual programming environment in introductory programming courses. We evaluated this implementation and we found that implementing visual programming environment like Scratch for first 3 weeks or 4 weeks in introductory programming course, it helps students a lot in transitioning to traditional text-based programming languages like Java. To summarize my overall computing education research experience, I would like to say that it was an exciting journey and I was very lucky to explore, evaluate and design different pedagogies and technology-enhanced learning environments to support students' learning of various computing education subdomains like information security, data structures, etc. To know more, you can visit my homepage at www.shitanshu.info. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Kapil Kadam. While learning computer graphics, visualization of three-dimensional transformation is still one of the major challenges faced by students. In my PhD thesis, I investigated the impact of mental rotation training on students' computer graphics problem-solving performance, especially the 3D transformation problems. I used Blender as a 3D visualization tool. What we found is that training helps students in resolving their learning difficulties, as well as students who did the training significantly outperformed the students who did not receive the training.
Hi, I am Ashutosh and I am a computer science graduate who has worked in the area of networking. I am also a passionate tinkerer, which is also the area of my research. So in my research, we try to create pedagogies that are based on the idea of tinkering. Using such pedagogical approaches along with some physical objects or simulation platforms, we try to teach skills like computational thinking. We use such pedagogies because they allow the learners to experience the concepts as they go ahead and solve problems while being situated in scenarios. And that is one of the advantages that we see by using pedagogies based on tinkering.
My name is Yogendra Pal. I am an assistant professor at NIIT University, Neemrana. I have done my doctorate with the EdTech department of IIT Bombay. Before joining PhD, I started working for the benefits of vernacular medium students. As being one of them, I was fully aware of their problems. During the doctorate, I dedicated myself to solve the problems of vernacular medium students that they face while learning programming. The result is a scaffolding framework that allow a teacher either to select English-only medium of instructions or select bilingual medium of instructions to teach programming to vernacular medium students. After the PhD, I started working on improving this framework so that it can also scaffold school-going vernacular medium students. And finally, with all the positive results that I get from this scaffolding framework, I started creating content to scaffold vernacular medium students to make them proficient in English language. And now I am working on improving this scaffolding framework further so that it can also be used in scaffolding other academic language learning like French, German, Tamil, Urdu, or even Sanskrit. You can visit my profile page to know more about me and my research work. Namaste.
Hello everyone, I am Rekha Ramesh. I work as an associate professor in computer engineering department in an engineering college under Mumbai University. I completed my PhD from Educational Technology Department, IIT Bombay. My work focused on assessment in education. Assessment is an integral part of an instruction and it has a profound influence on what students study, how much they study, and how effectively they study. If students are subjected to random and unfair assessment instrument, then it may not serve the intended purpose. The broad research objective of my thesis is how to improve the quality of instrument and how technology will assist in this process. I designed a framework to evaluate the teacher-generated assessment instrument and provide the feedback. Implementation of this framework resulted in the development of Instrument Quality Evaluator IQ tool. IQ measures the quality of instrument in terms of its alignment with the course objective. It provides two types of outputs, a numerical measure of alignment and its visual representation. If you want to know more about my thesis, please visit alumni profile webpage of Educational Technology website.
Okay, so that was some of my students sharing their ideas. I will just go back to the PPT and okay. So these were the examples that we had a look at, and if you would like more information about these examples, they are available. Their theses are available on my students page. So now some people have also asked the question, how does one move from one level to the other? So let's just look briefly at the different levels and what is required to transition from one level to the next. So if you look at level 0, basically the expectation is that you should have domain knowledge, right? And then when we transition from level 0 to level 1, what is happening is you're identifying the need and the usefulness of various pedagogical techniques. Like one that we have mentioned consistently in this talk is think, pair, share. Okay, and at level 1, you are evaluating the pedagogies with respect to your practice. You might have seen a best practices session somewhere, or you might have come across a network simulator being used in a particular way somewhere else, and you evaluate that with respect to your own course, and then you make appropriate changes in your course, and then you talk to other instructors about it. So basically at level 1, what you have are useful practices and strategies and course materials in a context. So there are, for example, 6CSE, the main conference for computer science education worldwide, has an entire session on sharing of such best practices. Then when you move to level 2, what you're looking at...
You don't see your screen.
Oh, okay, 1 second. Let me, I don't know why that's happened. Okay, hold on. Let me try to share the entire screen. And... okay, is it visible now?
No, not yet.
Right.
Sir, you will have to untick.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah, I think I have to quit the presentation mode also. Yeah, I'll share it one more time. I'll untick both of these. Okay, is it visible now?
No, not yet.
Now I don't understand what the problem is, because it's only allowing me to stop sharing.
He stopped.
I'll try one more time. Yeah, is it fine?
No, sir, it's still not visible.
No, sir. So, sir, you should stop the sharing, then start sharing once again without those ticks.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. That's exactly what I'm doing. Okay, I'll try one last time. Otherwise, I'll just talk about it in a moment. Okay. So let me try only sharing the PDF screen. Maybe that will work. Is this working?
No. Okay. So, the good idea to rejoin the session.
Yeah, I'll probably just do that. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me pick one more video, because maybe the video is what is causing the issue. Let me try whether a video works.
I'm Diti Reddy, and I'm happy to share my journey on how I transitioned from...
Okay, so what I have been talking about is transitioning across the levels. I'll come back to the slides in a moment. In the meantime, one of my students, Deepthi Reddy, she is actually a college teacher who has herself transitioned across these levels. So I'll play one video of hers, and then we will switch back to the slides. Hopefully the video will play this time. Okay, maybe this should work. I think once I play a video, it doesn't come back. Can you see the video?
Hi, I'm Dipti Reddy, and
Can you hear?
You can hear, not the video. You can hear.
You can't see?
Yeah, we can't see.
Okay, then I think I just have to join the session again.
Yeah,
okay. Let me just rejoin the session. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Let me share the video again. Can you see?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dipti Reddy, and I'm happy to share my journey on how I transitioned from a teacher to an engineering education researcher.
Yeah, were you able to hear also?
Yes.
Okay, okay. This just take 2 more minutes. I'll play this video.
So initially when I started teaching, that was immediately after my engineering education, and I had no prior knowledge or formal training on teaching learning techniques. So with experience, I understood that which teaching method is more useful for teaching a particular type of content. So the transition happened from level 1 to level 2 when I attended a quality improvement program on effective teaching learning techniques organized by Educational Technology Department in IIT. So henceforth, my focus changed from using more student-centric methods like think, share, peer instruction, or classroom. Then I transitioned from this level 2 to level 3 when I started my PhD in educational technology. So where I learned how to read and interpret education research articles, and I did some courses on research methods like educational research methods, research design, and science or learning theories, and etc. Then some preliminary studies were conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of teaching techniques, like how effective is TPS in teaching data structure course. And so this was level 3, and then the transition happened to level 4, that is engineering education researcher, when I started working on my own research problem. So one of the problems that I identified, that students are not very good in applying problem solving skills when an instructed problem is posed to them. So I researched on this problem, like how other researchers have approached this problem, or what technological solutions are proposed in literature, and I designed and developed a technological intervention for teaching problem solving skills to students. And this intervention was rigorously tested or evaluated by conducting various studies at various levels, and we did various qualitative and quantitative studies till we found some findings which can be published in literature, or these findings can be used by the researchers, or they can be used by educationists or instructional designers. So this is my journey from level 0 to level 4, and thank you for listening.
Okay, so let me try to get back to the slides. And if that doesn't work, I will quit and join again. Okay, are the slides visible?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this is what I was talking about in terms of moving across the levels, and Deepti has actually said very clearly what happens when you go from one level to other. So I'm just going to skip it. These slides can be just looked at as reference material. So in level 2, you're conducting experiments. In level 3, you're actually sharing the results, also doing quantitative as well as qualitative studies.
Ridha
And
sir,
in level,
sorry to interrupt, but since you have ticked both the options of sharing computer sound, so I mean the text is not clearly visible. So while sharing, you should untick them and then share.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm done with videos, so I will just share the PDF screen. Okay, is the screen fine?
Yes, sir. Now it's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me also?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So I will just now straight away transition to the next question. We've already heard Deepti about her journey. So now the question is, what sort of methods do you want to use in order to get there. So what are some of the methods for computing education research? So I'll go a little faster here because anyway this will be a little abstract. So one of the main thing is that, making claims about effective teaching and learning in computing is different from making claims about computing itself. Okay? So the teaching and learning actually has to borrow methods from, psychology, cognition, education, statistics, and so on. So there are theories of learning which one has to learn oneself. One has to learn about how to do these investigations, how to collect the data, how to choose participants, how to establish validity, reliability, and so on. So here the theory and the method are very tightly coupled. Okay, so context also plays a role. So what that means is that the generalizations are conditional rather than universal. So this can actually come as a shock to us from computer science, who are used to, single execution and it gives the same answer every time, or, there is a proof for a particular thing. So here it may be that, something holds in one context, it may not hold in another context because of some reasons. So there's a lot of qualifiers which are valid way of carrying out such research. Okay, so to give you a very quick idea, there are broadly three different types of methods. One is the qualitative and the other is the quantitative, and in between there is a mix of both of them. So the qualitative, which is the first row, the goal of qualitative methods is to get a very rich in-depth understanding of a phenomenon. So these are not large N studies, they are very small N studies, sometimes as few as 3 or 4 students, and you're trying to understand how something is happening, why something is happening, etc. So often they are dependent on field work, interviews, focus group, and the type of analysis that they use is called grounded theory or interaction analysis. So now these terms may be strange for some of you, but the references which we have in the slides, you can get more about it in case you're interested in that particular type of work. At the other end of the spectrum are your large N studies. So these can go from pre-post or a control group and an experimental group type of a study. So the idea here is to actually test a hypothesis. So once you have a hypothesis, so the qualitative study helps you to generate the hypothesis, and the quantitative study is often used to test the hypothesis. Okay? So, and this uses standard statistical techniques, inferential statistics, comparison of groups, what is the t-test, and so on and so forth. And in between both of them, when we are trying to understand trends or categories, so that there we use techniques like descriptive analysis. What are the distributions, what is the kind of transition of students, how are high performers and low performers doing across as the course progresses, and so on. So broadly speaking, these are three different types of research methods that you can use, and there are more resources about this on our departmental webpage. So I'll just quickly mention the type of method that we use for designing our interventions. Okay, so the method that we use is called design-based research. Basically, it allows us to go through all these phases. So for example, you identify a problem. Okay, so let's say I identify that students are having difficulty in learning how to do troubleshooting. Okay, so then there are two phases. One is to look at literature. How is troubleshooting taught in other disciplines? What has been said about students' difficulties? And then there is also the notion of analyzing how do experts do this? How do experts do troubleshooting? What is the difference between when a novice attempts troubleshooting versus an expert attempting? And all of this knowledge of the learning environment. So conjectural learning pathway, what that means is you think that, okay, if I make novices first do understanding the problem and compare the given network with the ideal network, then they will be able to generate more meaningful hypotheses and so on. So you conjecture a learning pathway and then you create the learning environment. So often a lot of us from computer science focus a lot on this actual coding of the learning environment. But what I'm trying to show here is there's a lot of things which comes around it And the learning environment is basically the tool for carrying out the investigation. And then once you've deployed the learning environment, like we saw in one of the videos, then what you do is you have generated a lot of data. Sometimes you have screen usage data, you have performance data, you also have survey data. So you analyze all these data and interpret the results to identify whether desired learning is happening. And one important thing that has to happen here is to be able to extend the theory. So this is what is called as the local learning theory. So how does the design support the learning? What is the learning mechanism? And that feeds back into the research of the community. And that's how the entire field grows of the knowledge about how learning of computing topics happen. Okay, so having said that, I suppose some of you may feel that, okay, this sounds interesting. How do I start doing computing education research? So here, the best place to start really is the computing education blog. Okay, so this is a blog that is an initiative by Prajesh, whom you met in the video. So if you just Google IITB Computing Education Research blog, it will take you to the blog. And from there, there are links to a lot of resources and a lot of different areas. Like there is an entire tab which says how to get started. Then there are books that you can read. Again, the links to these books are provided from the blog, so you don't have to really note them down right now. And there are other blogs like Mark Gazal's blog and Amy Koh's blog. Both of these are very famous and very regularly updated as well as regularly referred to. Then there are conferences like 6CSC, ITI-CSC and ICER. These are like 3 major conferences that happen worldwide. In India, of course, there's Compute and there is T4E, which is the Education Technology for Education Conference. And then there is AIED, AI in Education, Learning Analytics, Educational Data Mining. So these are all conferences. Any of these conferences, if you look at the past 3-4 years papers, you'll get an idea of how the field is moving along. And many of these conference papers subsequently become journal papers. So these are the journals in which typically they are published in ACM, TOCE, Computer Science Education, sometimes also in the IEEE Transactions on Education. So one easy way to do this is to attend the next session where Shitanshu will be talking about how to design and conduct research studies. Also, many of these conferences are online, so it should be easy to attend them. Okay, one last point about this is how do we collaborate for computing education research? So typically what happens is that computing education researchers are in a minority in any given institute. It will be the core research areas which will be in the majority in a department. So the key here is to form the community across institutes. So start with topics that you care about and collaborate with like-minded colleagues. So that helps us to overcome this isolation issue of I'm the only person in my institute who's working on this. So that may be true, but then there are 10 other people in 10 other institutes who are working on similar topics, and that's how we can create multi-institutional studies. So this is again a topic which will be discussed in the conference later on. So I will not go more into that. Okay, so this is again a link to our website, which provides a lot of these resources. How to do ET research, templates for generating ideas, planning your studies, and so on. So a lot of this will be talked about in the next session. Okay, so now for the last few minutes, let me just talk about why do we need computing education research in India? So the question is, how accepted is it as a research area? So the key point there we have to understand is, as Professor Jayant also mentioned in the inaugural, that ACM itself recognizes it. So there is the Transactions on Computing Education, and there are major conferences. Okay, there are several researchers around the world doing this research, and there are many CS departments in the world which recognize computing education research as a meaningful area for them to recruit in and grow their faculty strengths. So for us in India, although we don't have too many departments around the country which are hiring computer education researchers, it's an opportunity for us to be part of an emerging and relevant area. And more importantly, it also gives us a slightly different angle, as we will see on the next slide. So far we saw that research goals that are of interest to the community worldwide. So how does think, pair, share happen? How do novices approach software design, and so on? Now, such goals are of course relevant to India, but then in India we have this the beauty of this diversity. Okay, so because of that, we need different educational innovations. So one of the things that I repeatedly mention is that when you want to scale a technology innovation, for example, you've invented a new type of mobile phone, and you want to scale it, you basically all you have to do is to try and reach it out to larger and larger number of people, right? On the other hand, if you look at an educational innovation, that type of scaling does not really work because the contexts differ. So what works in the American context may not work in the Indian context. In India itself, what works in Tamil Nadu may not actually work in Assam, and so on and so forth. So what we need are multiple innovations, and a place where all these innovations can be shared and people can actually draw upon this knowledge. And one of the places that we are trying to put all of them together is through these blogs and so on. So these are some of the factors. I'm sure you're familiar with most of them, so I'll not delve into details of each of them. So just to quickly give you an idea, so one is, how does language affect computing learning? So this you heard Yogendra Pal as part of the video about, and his thesis deals with how do students from vernacular language respond to being taught in English versus being taught in a mix of English and the vernacular language. And then there are also questions like what factors influence students' choice of computing? How do these factors influence the subject matter? What do teachers do because of that? And more specific open-ended questions like how can the access to education be improved? How does it affect people's lives? These are not questions to which I have answers, and these are not questions to which we even have the beginnings of how to go about answering them systematically yet. But these are very important questions which we need to ask and maybe discuss in the breakout, and come up with project proposals and investigate systematically. So this brings me to the last slide. So this is the you saw so many people come and talk in the videos, and these are my students, Ashutosh, Lakshmi, Prajesh, and Kavya. Deepti and Shitanshu have graduated, so they have all helped and contributed ideas towards making this talk. And there are others in our CS Education Research Group. You've seen Yogendra, Kapil, and Rekha. Ritujit and Aditi have graduated, and they're not included in the videos. The faculty are Professor Sanamurthy and Professor Sashi Kumar. And there are other faculty and alumni and students of EdTech IITB who have participated in different studies at different times, and who all share a piece of the recognition through this ACM OCCE award. So with that, thank you very much. And this presentation itself is available on my website. If you just Google IIT Bombay and click on talks, you can download it right away. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridhar.
So I will stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, maybe we'll take a couple of quick questions since we lost some time. With one question from Dr. Mehta, it says that what is the impact of different levels on students' performance? Any detailed analysis is done?
Okay, so Venkatesh, perhaps you can mute.
Yes.
So what is the impact of these levels on student performance? See, student performance is just one of the metrics that we use to see what changes happen. Okay, so the levels may or may not impact the performance, because the performance is impacted by the intervention, not by the way you are analyzing or the rigor with which you are carrying out the study. Okay, so for example, there may be other things that you're looking out. So So there is an idea called the TEL metrics, so technology enhanced learning metrics. So which says, there is the notion of attractiveness, which is engagement. Then there is the notion of accessibility, is it making accessible to everyone? Then there is efficiency, does it make it easy for the teacher or the student? And then there is effectiveness, which is like, is there learning actually happening, or is perception of learning happening, and so on. So what happens is that even if, so let's say you have an idea which you implement at a level 1. Okay, so you're implementing your new idea, whatever, some new idea you've come up with, you're just implementing it in your classroom. That is fine actually. Now, the only thing there that is missing will be that you will not get any feedback on whether your idea is working or not. So you will go to level 2 with the same idea. And while it may be working in a similar way, now you get systematic feedback on whether your idea is working or not, how to tweak your idea in order to make it more effective. Now you want to go beyond yourself and you want to say, I want to share this idea. So that's when you go to level 3 and you do a more rigorous study to convince others that, hey, look, my idea works. It's not just working for me, but it will work for you also. Please try it. Okay. And then you go to level 4 where you say that, okay, why is my idea working? What is really happening inside that causes my idea to work? That's when you're at level 4. Now, all through these levels, it may happen that the final exam that you give to students, they may be doing pretty much equally well, right? So that's the difference between the student performance and moving across the levels. Okay.
There is one more question from me saying that the MTech programs in computer education are confined only to NITTR. What are the bottlenecks for offering these programs in regular technical institutes? I think IIT Bombay has already started, right?
Yeah, so the MTech program, see, the key bottleneck is the availability of expertise. So like I mentioned in the beginning, so it's not enough to be a CS domain expert in order to do CS education research. We have to venture beyond our domain and we have to learn education research, their methods, learning sciences, and that takes some effort. Like, for example, I put in about 4 years of effort to acquire this expertise before I could, confidently move into this area. So that investment requires to be made by different people as well as, different departments. Institutes have to say that, okay, we are going to make this investment. Some of us are going to move to this area, and then you can start an MTech program, because the coursework again will also be different. So if you go to our website, you will find our MTech coursework list. So you can look at that and you can borrow it. And of course, we are there to provide the support to establish more such MTech programs in the country.
Even I have a question. Teacher level 0 to 4 framework is interesting, but can it be used to measure group teaching? The reason I'm asking this is in many colleges, teachers are promoted based on their research and publication. But if I want to promote a teacher based on his teaching practice, I need to be able to measure what group teaching is. So is this framework helpful?
Yeah. So this is a very good question actually. So how do you measure? Like, for example, if you are at level 3 and level 4, the publications, you still will have publications because there will be, conference papers and journal papers which you can write about your work, because that's where you're already at a level where your findings are robust enough to be shared. Okay, but what about if you are at level 2 or you're at level 1 where you have a very good idea and you're enthusiastically implementing it and so on. So we need to provide such information, such avenues. Like, for example, ACM could recognize such teachers. Now, how do you identify them? I mean, at some point, it will have to be through student feedback. So, for example, when I did the CS 101 study in IIT Bombay, so this was first year students. They were not used to this idea of doing something in class. They were used to sitting and listening. So we carried it out over a period of time. They got used to it and so on. And at the end of the course, they actually wrote in the course feedback saying that a lot of teachers should start implementing such ideas, peer instruction and TPS. Teachers should not only come to the class and lecture. So, capturing such feedback and, highlighting it to the college management is one way of getting recognition or, credibility for your work at level 1 and level 2. Subsequent to that, from level 3 onwards, you already have the publications which bring you that credibility.
We take one more question. How disruptive technologies like IoT, AR, VR, MR can impact and contribute to teaching, learning, education, and research?
Yeah, so this question is slightly outside the purview of this talk, but I'll take it anyway. See, so these technology, see, it's just like any other technology. Okay, so like what I had said in the beginning, so that's one of the areas that we investigate is these emerging technologies and see whether how the technology can be used for teaching and learning. So the technology by itself cannot do anything. Okay, so whether it is AR, VR, whatever. So the technology is not the silver bullet. The thing is how we use the technology. So what is the corresponding pedagogy? So what is important is to identify for what topic is this technology suitable, and then identify what is the corresponding pedagogy that I should employ along with this technology, and that together is what forms the answer.
There is one question here from Professor Vishwanath. Any work in teaching CS in Indian languages? Because I saw that studying history making a statement about at IITs being identified for teaching in Indian languages. So any work on that?
So I am not aware of. But that may simply be my limitation. And the work may exist, but I am not aware of that. Okay.
I think we will end this session. Thank you, Sridhar, for that interesting talk. And now I hand over the floor to organizers again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sridhar Iyer and Professor Venkatesh Kamath. We will start with the next session in 2 minutes. Kindly remain connected.